My name is Benjamin Park, and I am the author of the book American Zion, A New History of Mormonism. Dallin H has spent a career dedicating to upholding institutions and teaching what he sees as law and order and boundaries. He was a law professor at the University of Chicago Law School after clerking for the Supreme Court Chief Justice Earl Warren. At one point, he became the interim dean for the University of Chicago Law School, and he was chair over a very significant disciplinary committee for the entire university during the tumultuous year of 1968, handling nearly 200 cases of students who would eventually become expelled due to their protesting over the Vietnam War and civil rights issues. He then was handpicked to be BYU's president during the 1970s when he oversaw the university's professionalization and growth and expansion. Following that tenure, he served a term on the Utah Supreme Court case as a Supreme Court justice, helping reify some of the legal practices and precedents that he had long championed. And then in 1984, he was selected as an apostle for the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, after which he became one of the most influential and consequential apostles in the last 40 years of the LDS Church. While there are plenty of reports that Elder Dallin H. is a very generous, gregarious, and even funny person behind closed doors, he has adopted the persona of serious and substantial and somber thinker in public, a position that he feels appears to be necessary for ecclesiastical leadership. In other words, he knows he is performing a role for the faithful, and he is willing to embrace that persona in order to, what he believes, do diligence and promote the dignity of that office. He is also well known for carrying over his legal ideas and law and order persona from his time as a law professor, as a university president, as a Supreme Court justice, into the ecclesiastical realm. He does not shy away from framing his general conference talks like legal briefs, where he lays out in point 1, I'm going to discuss this, then move to point 2, and then move to synthesis and takeaways and judgment in rule 3. So I think it's clear that Dallin H. embraces that legal background and tries to appropriate it for an ecclesiastical purpose. I don't expect any massive changes during a Dallin H. presidency, in part because it seems like he was at the side of Russell M. Nelson for the last few years and agreed with a lot of these reforms that both had long seen. They entered the Quorum of the 12 at the same time in 1984. They served side by side for many decades, and then they ruled over the church in a similar way. I do think we'll see a decrease in temples just because of the massive infrastructure and investment that goes into the 200 that Russell M. Nelson already announced. But other than that, I don't see many institutional changes, primarily because the LDS Church of today is the creation of Dallin H. Oakes's and others' works over the previous few decades. So I think he's already influenced the church in a number of ways so that he does not see the need for any massive changes going forward. That said, I think many people expected the same of Russell M. Nelson. He became the LDS president, and that prediction proved laughably wrong. So I would not be surprised if there are major changes introduced by Dallin H. I just wouldn't wager money on it. I do hope that the verboten status of Mormon as a nickname does go away. All anecdotes coming out of Salt Lake City are that Dallin H. still uses the term himself, or at the very least, he does not have the vehement objection to the term like his predecessor did. So I hope that that might ease some tension a bit and allow believers, critics, observers, scholars, journalists to be able to use that very useful term once again without the risk of being denounced for it. During COVID, there were plenty of Latter-day Saints who said that it was a sign of divine providence that God had established a prophet with a medical background during a time of a global pandemic, though of course we saw some of the limits of following prophetic counsel on things like vaccines and masks. I wonder if the same type of faithful narrative will be constructed around now the LDS Church having a constitutional law professor as the church's president at a time where there are lots of disputes over the limits of the Constitution, democratic law, and even religious liberty. All topics that Dallin H has weighed in on in the past. The question is, will he feel it necessary to speak on those topics now that he has the mantle of church president? It is easy to see how Dallin H. Oakes' visions and policies and arguments in the last few decades conflicted with more progressive-minded members of the faith, especially on LGBTQ policies. But I do think it's noteworthy that in several instances in which Dallin H. Oakes has weighed in on contemporary political and cultural issues in recent years, he has done so to chide the more far-right members of the faith. That means using the words Black Lives Matter when he spoke to Brigham Young University. That means saying that Latter-day Saints respect the outcomes of elections in the wake of the January 2021 insurrection at the Capitol. So I think Dallin H. Oakes, at his heart, is an institutionalist. He probably views himself as a moderate, which means he is likely as worried about the rising populism in the nation as he is about progressivism. And the degree to which he is going to be willing to speak out on those issues is going to be quite crucial at this moment of a partisan divide. And in general, the thing I am most interested in following in the next few years is how does an individual who has dedicated his life to institutional stability and curbing democratic excesses, how is he going to function in an exceptionally partisan and divided community that seems to denounce the very types of institutions and traditions that he has long championed?
What do you think are the most salient changes or contributions that he made?
Well, I mean, on the ground, it's going to be hard to top changing the worship services on Sunday from 3 hours to 2 hours, which probably on its own is significant, but it is also reflective of a broader shift in mindset for Latter-day Saints toward what he calls a home-based gospel, which is this focus on the nuclear family as the locus of religious ritual and performance, and that needs to take place in the home. So there's an emphasis on traditional family and learning at the home and conjoining those familial experiences at the heart of the gospel rather than outsourcing them to the church. So we see a decrease in what used to be some, dominant LDS traditions, Boy Scouts and pageant.